It's all your fault. Either you hire the wrong one or you train them wrong. You just gotta decide what it is. So if you have that in mind, you don't need to be upset with anyone.
But it was around 19, 20 years old, and I moved away from my parents, rented a small room, and worked at this countryside inn, you can say. And I remember the head chef there, after my trial shift, he was like, I'm not 100% sure you're fitted for this here. And I just remember that moment, and I'm going to prove him wrong.
What advice would you give to young chefs or young restaurateurs who want to be at those Formula One kitchens?
You need to be professional and you need to be serious.
Be patient.
That's what you need to do.
Welcome back, JKP soldiers. We have something super special for you. Today on the Chef JKP Podcast, we are witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime moment. 5 years worth of interviews, I sit in this chair. My job as the host is to get as much information from the guests as possible. At the same time, there is a lot of research that goes on behind the scenes. And as a professional chef, I also have to research what's happening globally with trends, restaurants, who's making waves in the industry. I would say that by now, I don't normally get nervous. However, for this interview, I had to keep my nerves in check as I have been following the upcoming guests' work for over 15 years. Two absolute titans of the culinary world. Chef Torsten Vildgaard and Chef Björn Frantzén are in the studio with me, and honestly, I can't put into words what an honor it is. Between them, they have shaped, pushed, and completely redefined modern gastronomy. Chef Torsten, after over a decade in the legendary Noma, opened his own Michelin-starred restaurant and has now brought his culinary brilliance and expertise to FZN, the electrifying new concept at Atlantis, the Palm. And Chef Björn, a culinary visionary who holds not one, but two 3-star Michelin restaurants, Frantzén and Zen. Something only a handful of chefs have ever achieved in history. His relentless pursuit of perfection has placed him at the very top of the global culinary world. And now, these two game changers have combined forces at FZN, setting a whole new benchmark for dining in the Middle East. This is a raw, real, and utterly riveting conversation about passion, sacrifice, leadership, and creativity, and what it truly means to cook at the highest possible level. You're not going to want to miss a single second of this one. Listen out for a story about Björn's first ever kitchen incident. Time to rock and roll.
Hi, this is Björn Frantzén. I'm a chef. If you like the podcast, make sure to follow, share, and subscribe.
Hello, my name is Torsten Vildgaard. I'm the executive chef at FZN. If you like the podcast, make sure to follow, share, and subscribe.
So gents, thank you very much for taking the time to be here today. Now, as is customary on the show, can you please tell me your first or favorite childhood food memory? Björn, we'll start with you.
Oh, I guess it's something my grandma used to cook, and she did this beautiful meatloaf with like roasted root vegetables and like mushroom sauce. We used to go there on Sundays, me and my cousins. So yeah, that's my first one. Grandma cooking that meatloaf.
Wow.
Yeah.
And yourself, Torsten?
It's also my grandmother. Me and my brothers and sisters and my mom, we were walking to my grandmother's summer house, like 5 Ks. I guess I must have been around 5 years old and something like that. So it felt like a day trip going there. And in the summer house, she had prepared like a roasted chicken and newly digged up potatoes, salad from the garden, rhubarb from the garden as a compote to accompany, and a gravy with cream and parsley from the garden as well. And it's sitting there with the grass just being freshly lawned, and just sitting and taking all these smells and flavors in has been a memory that
Right. Wow.
stick with me ever since.
So can you both tell me then, what was this sort of traditional family day that you would have, let's say, all of you together gathered at a table?
Well, I guess it was what I remember. It was mostly around like school breaks, school holidays.
Right.
So around Christmas, and especially in Sweden, the midsummer, the whole families were gathered, and it was this traditional midsummer food with herrings and anchovies and new potatoes, all that. So I would say definitely around midsummer it was a big thing in Sweden. Still is.
And same for you, Torsten, or was it more of a Sunday?
I would say my family was very good at. We were a small family,
Right.
but my parents were very good at bringing us to the dinner table in the weekends. So and they were very good at making it a feast, even though it was not high quality.
Tell me about the feast there. Tell me about the feast. What were the things that you would have on that table?
Yeah, but my mom and dad was not brilliant cooks at all. So it was what the supermarket kind of could display.
Right.
All the cold cuts and salad from package and stuff like that. But they were very good at just making sure the whole table was packed with these things. And we sat for hours and we ate.
Right.
And that was kind of an ongoing thing.
Okay.
And when traditions came like Easter and stuff like that, of course it was modified a bit, like proper dry lamb and all these things.
Mm-hmm. Wow. But then for both of you, then if you talk about your teenage sort of time, what was the educational path that you wanted to go down? Was it always within food, or was it something completely different, Björn?
Well, for me, it was completely different. I have sort of never, hang around in grandma's, skirt. I was into football, and that's all I did. I was playing football 6 days a week, and it was even up to the age of 2021. So I came into cooking very, very late. So it's never been that for me.
Okay.
Never. Not that love for being a chef in that sense, never. But and I've always been super picky with food. There was a lot of stuff I didn't eat and still doesn't. But when I was 11, 12, my best friend at the time, his parents had a small French brasserie in central Stockholm. We went there, and I had my first steak frites, this perfect ribeye, French fries, nice and crispy, really salty, and a tomato and red onion salad with a perfect sort of balsamico olive oil sort of vinaigrette, and obviously a regular Coke back then. And that was a hallelujah moment for me. So, I said, okay, backup plan. I need to become a chef so I can learn to cook this so I can eat it every day, because that was all I wanted to eat for the rest of my life.
Right. But throughout your sort of, let's say, football career, from the time that you started to sort of the time that you ended, I could imagine that the diet was quite important as a sports person, no?
I wish I could say yes on that one, but it wasn't. But, you were training 2 hours a day. You can eat, anything. You didn't, go up in weight or anything. But back then, unfortunately, I'm at that age now that people wasn't talking that much about food related to sports, 30 years ago. You weren't. So, it was just normal kind of comfort food that mom cooked. And then when I came home late after the, training sessions, I was eating shitloads of sandwiches, toasted sandwiches and drinking milk, and like there was no day tomorrow. But what was it? Unfortunately, it wasn't, that healthy food at that time.
Okay, so then if you tell me about bread and toasted sandwiches, what type of bread specifically? Because in Sweden, you've got different types, right?
Yeah, but I was eating, regular white loaf toast and shitloads of salted butter, and then cheese on top of that, and maybe some orange marmalade.
Wow.
That was it, and I could eat 15 of those when I go home after practice.
Umami bomb.
Oh, it was. I love it. So, yeah, that was what it was.
Fantastic. And Torsten, for you, what was the educational path you decided to take early on?
But I always knew that I wanted to become a chef. Since I was very little, I was always keen. I was very sensitive with flavors and smells and stuff like that. But I didn't know, what a chef was when you're so young. But it stuck to me. But I decided to go to high school as well, just to actually make my mom proud, because none of us in the family has an education, academic education. And I barely made it from normal school to high school, but I fought my way through it. And I actually fall in love with studying. I found out that cooking and science goes hand in hand.
Right.
And at the time at high school, I fall in love with a character, a guy called Claus Meyer, a young guy that made TV shows and he spoke passionately, and he introduced words to Copenhagen, Denmark, called cassoulet. He talked about French pies and fricassee and all these things. And when you grow up in a suburb where I grew up, and it was like wholesome food, a lot of it was taken from the freezing counter, you know what I mean, and brought to life in boiling water. And this sounded like magic to me. And I kind of wanted to meet this person, and he inspired me a lot. And we actually managed to become partners in a restaurant further down the road.
Right.
When I was done with high school, I was on a crossroad. Either I had to go to university and study chemistry, or pursue my passion of cooking. And I tried the cooking part, and it's just stuck to me.
Fantastic. And how old were you when you sort of first stepped into a professional kitchen?
Must have been around 20, I believe.
20.
I think so.
Okay.
Around 20, after high school and a little bit of Ibiza vacation and all this that you do.
Nice.
I guess.
So then, Bjorn,
19, 20, yeah.
No, so almost very similar ages then when you both sort of stepped into the professional realms. So after your football career, when did you decide to really sort of take the job seriously, to go into the kitchen as a chef?
Well, I had an injury, so I was forced to quit the football path, and I went into a Michelin-starred kitchen as, like a stage, just to work for free and to get into it. And for me, coming from, a professional soccer background, it was the perfect substitute in that sense that, it's a lot the same as 10 minutes before, kick off in a game in the dressing room. It's a group of people that has to perform on a high level, where there's a lot of high expectations coming from the outside. So, and it's the same opening, a Michelin-star restaurant 10 minutes before you open the door. You don't really know what's going to happen during service, and you gotta work and perform as a team. So it was, it fitted me so perfectly after the football career. So, yeah, this is my backup plan. And so, no, it was perfect.
But I think it's quite interesting that you decided to go into the Michelin game quite full on, because some chefs wouldn't have done that. They would have gone to like a brasserie or something a bit more, but to go into that level, like Formula One straight away. How did you find it? Was it intimidating?
It was, but it was also, because being on a level where you're a professional athlete, it's a lot of same feelings in that sense. So I could use that background, and so it felt like I fitted in straight away.
Okay.
It's a pretty competitive and all that. So yeah, and I'm glad I actually ended up there, because you never know. As I say, if you go into a brasserie and in some restaurants they don't take the professional as serious as they do in Michelin-star restaurants. So in that way, it was just I was lucky, because it was actually a Michelin-star restaurant that was in one of the suburbs of Stockholm, which was very rare back then. But I was living very nearby. So, it was just kind of thing, one of these sliding door moments.
Right.
It was meant to happen in some way, I think.
And Torsten, for yourself, when was the first time you sort of stepped into a professional kitchen?
But it was around 19, 20 years old, and Klaus Meyer, as I mentioned, he had a partner in his TV shows, and that guy had a restaurant, and it was pretty far away from where I lived, and it was also time for me to leave, my parents, and try to invent myself. So I moved away from my parents, and rented a small room, and worked at this on the countryside inn, you can say, where this guy, he had a garden as well with herbs and vegetables. He had animals going in the fields not that far. We had the forest nearby. We had the oceans nearby. So we were exposed to all these like beautiful products. And just that Klaus Meyer was kind of vouching for him was just for me like, okay, I want to be there. And I remember the head chef there, the owner, Jan, after my trial shift, he was like, I'm not 100% sure you're fitted for this here. And I just remember that moment, wow, I wanted this so bad. And I'm going to prove him wrong. I'm going to prove him wrong. And I did.
Okay, very good. So then what I want to get into, so first of all, I want to talk about this series of the Michelin game. Now, Bjorn, you work for some hardcore boys and girls. So let's, Nico, Pierre de Terre. I want to ask you, back then, how were London kitchens?
I think London in the end of the 90s and the beginning of, the next decade was the worst in the world. It was tough. It was brutal in some times, and you work, 80, 90 hours a week. But I learned a lot. And back then there was no 2 Michelin-starred, 3 Michelin-star restaurants in Sweden. So, and, I didn't speak any other language than, obviously Swedish and then English. So for me, there was not an option than, the UK. US was too far out, and there was no Michelin in the US at the time either. So, but it was tough, but also very learning, and it builds character, I would say.
But what were the biggest lessons you sort of took away from your time there?
Well, what I also learned, I realized later, because what I couldn't figure out, because it was so hard in the kitchen and, brutal in that sense. Chefs stayed for 6 to 8 to 10 months, and then you were too tired. You needed to leave. And every time you change staff, the head chef or the owner has to work so hard to train the new people that comes in to the same level as the one that left. So it's a bit like derailing the train.
Right.
So, I couldn't figure that out. Why aren't they more friendly so people are staying longer? Because then the train can just move on and you can progress all the time. So it's a bit like, you need to stop, and then you need to train new people up to the same level, and then you can move on again. But that happened all the time because people were leaving all the time, and they did, what we call walkouts, because, trying to leave or quit, it wasn't really accepted. So you stayed, last after a service, and you took your knives, and then you buggered off and you never came back.
Yeah.
So, the restaurant got in the shit all the time. So I would say that was one lesson I learned, like, hold on, you need to keep the team members on for a longer time if you're going to be able to, move on to the next platform all the time, to, raise the level. So that was one of the sort of key lessons that I took with me, that I couldn't understand. Why are they treating staff like this? I couldn't get it.
But I think that's a phenomenal lesson for later down the years, obviously,
it was.
With the way that you're running the businesses and the kitchens now.
It is.
Now, Torsten, for yourself, of course, you're here in this incredible new restaurant that we have right here in Dubai.
Definitely.
But before we get to that, your time in Noma, again, it was one of those restaurants that sort of changed the game in terms of the foraging, what you did, the chemistry, of course, went into one way, understanding Scandinavian ingredients, so on and so forth. How would you describe the years that you had there?
For me, it was amazing. It was truly an amazing experience and journey we were on. And especially because we could see that we could push these things in the right direction, like we wanted. In terms of, it was a hassle to get live seafood in the beginning. And it was a hassle to put on the menu because we were the only restaurant taking it. But with a few months, a year down the line, we could see that people were supporting it, and it became way easier. It was amazing being part of a restaurant that also skyrocket like it did. You had to pinch yourself sometimes, and it never really lingered on me like that because I was so happy being part of the kitchen. So all the things around it just happened. But I was so focused on the job and the team and, developing that, everything happens around it. You know what I mean?
But how would you then describe the culture, during the service when as Bjorn said, 10 minutes before you've got your briefing, you don't know what's going to happen. You've got probably some of the biggest names in the world coming in.
Yes.
And, you are essentially serving that food directly to the guest.
Yeah, and we didn't have the experience of handling this pressure. So, it was also, at times, the waves were very high there in the kitchen. But we all learned from it, you know what I mean? And a lot of people stayed for a long time because we were part of something, it made sense. We kind of understood the pressure that was on Rene. Sometimes he maybe handled it a little bit wrong in our opinion, but, we also understood that it was like, we're part of something, we're doing it. It just had to be fair. And he also came and was also fair after service if something went sideways.
No, but I think the other thing is that what I want to understand from the both of you is that when you look at Scandinavian cooking, for me personally, I think it completely changed the game globally in the culinary scene because it made you understand what's possible with cleaner ingredients, different types of techniques, whether they were from France, whether they were from Japan, but it was always about the beautiful ingredients and to be true to the land. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
I would say so, and I think I was talking to, there was a lot happening at the same time in the region. Obviously, Noma was kind of first out and in the forefront of that. But you see this big change that happened in the Nordic cooking because before this, we're talking, this been going on for 20 years.
Yes.
That's it, You see this big change every 150 years in a region's gastronomy. And, at the same time, there was a lot happening. 50 Best came along and became huge. And you had social media happening, especially. It started with Twitter and then into Instagram, etc. Before that, what we did as chefs, we traveled somewhere, we ate somewhere, we took pictures with a camera, and we asked if we can bring the menu back with us. And we went back, and then we tried to kind of translate it with a lexicon, So it was a very unique. So I feel in many ways very blessed because it's a very unique time. It has been for the last, I would say, 15, 20 years to actually run a fine dining establishment in this part of the world. And before that, there was a lot of French and German and Austrian head chefs running, the fine dining establishments in the Nordic region. And then suddenly we were, a bunch of guys roughly around the same age that been training overseas to other restaurants. I was over there and Rainer was in Ebuye and etc., etc., etc. That, hold on, we want to do something differently. And we all started and then trying to create our own path in this. So, yeah, there was a lot happening at the same time.
Well, I also wanted to understand, Bjorn, from your point of view, when you then decided to open your very, very first restaurant. What was the catalyst? Why did you want to do it, first of all?
Because I always had a lot of opinion when I was employed somewhere. So yeah, I think some people are the destinies to actually run their own restaurant, and for me it was, I felt like I always been very creative, and I wanted to try on my own and see how far I could get, and also I didn't want to have anyone else to blame if it became how I wanted, which is the nice thing. If you're running a restaurant and own it, it's all your fault. So that's what I wanted, and yeah, and you know, you as I said, it was a lot happening in the region, so I felt like it was the right time to actually do it. Yeah, and I had a great training. I mean, I worked in a lot of 2 and 3 Michelin-starred restaurants, and it's like, what am I going to do now? I need to do my own thing.
So then tell me about the opening day. How many of you were in the kitchen, front of house?
Well, originally it was 2 of us. It was me, and then there was my partner called Daniel Lindeberg, who was a pastry guy. So I was doing all the hot cooking, and I was doing the wash up at the same time. He was plating all the cold stuff and the hot stuff. And there was 2 guys in front of house, and we decided to go with a 10-course menu, or you could choose a 20-course menu.
Wow.
And how many seats for the restaurant?
23. It was a nightmare. It was a proper nightmare. And this was also, we were into kind of molecular kind of thing. You know, it was El Bougie peak, and Alenia just came through, and etc., etc. So there was a combination of, you know, good ingredients, but it was also a lot of kind of chemistry stuff going on. And I remember the first service, I think the 20-course menu took 7.5 hours to get out. Yeah, we went down, man. We went down.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a nightmare.
And it was for dinner only?
Dinner only.
Right.
5 days a week. And yeah, I still remember it today, the first time. It was so embarrassing. Because you go in there with a lot of confidence, and you think you're all that, etc., and then smack.
Right.
You're down to reality, like shit, and so many things went wrong. But you know, you live and you learn.
So the weekend after those first 5 days, apart from sort of trying to sleep, did you immediately action plan things? Did you get more staff in? Did you reduce the menu?
No, but we were changing the menu a lot, because, you know, obviously realizing 7.5 hours, no one wants to eat dinner that long time. So there was a lot of, you know, tweaks on the menu. So we worked hard. We were open Tuesday to Saturday. Sunday, Monday, all we did was like revamping the menu, and we've been test cooking for 8 months. So, you know, we needed to speed up. So I remember those first months, they were tough. We opened 1st of February in 2008. And then in May, we employed the first extra chef.
Right.
But until then, it was it was a nightmare.
Then, Torsten, for you, after Noma, then you also went to open your own place, studio. Of course, you know, you had the experience of working in Formula One kitchens, but running your own place, opening your own restaurant also has its massive set of challenges, I would say.
Definitely.
How was your first opening day?
Way different than that, because I had a team around me,
right.
You know. But of course, you look back at it, and it was a journey. We did a lot of mistakes as well. You have to learn the surroundings. You need to learn the room, how it works. You had to build your team. We started here, but after a certain period, you learn what your tools, how to handle them.
And what was your biggest challenge from opening that restaurant?
I think there was people, staff,
humans.
That was the biggest challenge. You know, getting the right people in, and you think you have the right people, and a few months after, you know, they signed up to do a job and be working here in. We didn't have a Michelin star back then, but the ambitions were within 2 years to get a star. That was what I told myself, and that's the people there to also motivate them, understand why I was pushing, like I was pushing, you know, see if I could inspire them. But then they think that, to working like that, that's like easy. But it's not. It takes a lot of hours. And looking back at it, maybe I did something wrong by, you know, squeezing the hours too much, squeezing the people a little too much. But you did it because you were young and ambitious.
No, true. But at the same time, 5 months after you got your first star, which is amazing, no?
Yeah, definitely. It came also as a big shock because, like I said, it was my ambitions to aim for this because I know that it's hard work and you need a strong team around you and also front of house. So I know that it doesn't come easy. So I expected it to happen within 2 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To be realistic, because I saw how difficult it was at Noma. Even though we were pushing and we had a big team around us and everything, we never really climaxed there.
Right.
You know what? We did a lot of other things, but Michelin-wise, I had big respect for these people.
But then beyond 2009, the first star came along, which was amazing. Then 2010, the second star, bang, amazing. And then the big one, 2018, the third star. Were you expecting it then or sooner?
The third star, you mean?
Yes.
No. You never expect a third Michelin star.
We were on your behalf.
No, but you never know. I mean, here's the thing. You know, there's a lot of 2 Michelin star restaurants out there compared to 3 Michelin stars. So it's a small needle to get through to 3. And quite honestly, until you get it, you don't know if you have it. Do you actually have 3 Michelin stars in you? It's not anything you can expect, you know. But of course, being on a 2-star level for 9 or 10 years, pushing every year, and then, you know, finally I decided that, you know, not so much for the Michelin stars, but I felt like we have, you know, every year we had sort of renovate the restaurant and trying to push it to become a better restaurant in many ways, and then there was nothing left to do. It was altogether like 90 square meters. It was a tiny restaurant. There was nothing else to do, and I remember we decided to we discussed to renovate the washing up area again, and it's like that won't do anything better for the guests. I mean, and then that's when I decided I think to get to the next level, and also for us working there, you know, the only thing we can do now is try to, you know, move to a new space, and, you know, we wanted, you know, to start with open fire cooking, and there's a lot of things that we couldn't do in the old space. So no, I wasn't expecting it. No, but I felt that in the new space, were we a better restaurant than in the old space? Definitely, absolutely. Food was better, comfort was better, bigger wine cellar. So, you know, I think we improved on all levels.
But you obviously had a following of loyal customers and guests before the third star.
Yep.
But then what happened the week after you received the third star in terms of business and press and all those sorts of things?
Well, I guess there's a reason why I think all chefs around the world agree on this, that there's Michelin is number one, and that's for a reason, because the Michelin stars, and especially when you're joining the 3 Michelin star family, it's massive. It's massive. You know, the pressure on bookings, the press, everything. It's huge. It's huge. It's the biggest there is in the restaurant industry. Yeah.
But it must have. I mean, how did you feel personally from gaining that? Because of course,
I gotta be honest.
You have a team behind you as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. The first feeling is actually relief, because the whole group, the whole company, almost went bankrupt because we got delayed with the new opening. And we spent way more money than we budget. So, and I felt like, what the heck have I done? Because the company almost go bankrupt. So the first feeling was relief, and then it was joy.
Okay.
But boringly enough, fairly quickly, just a few days, that's the thing, you know? I think the Michelin Awards was on a Monday, and then we open again on Tuesday. You're still high on Tuesday, but then on Wednesday, it's back to the normal problems. Like, what's the quality of the langoustines? What's happening with this? You're back to the small details or problems day to day. It's just back again. Obviously, you're fully booked all the time and etc. But for us working within it, okay, but it's back to normal again. We have a business to run and etc.
But am I right in saying that in the same year you opened in Singapore in 2018?
Yes, we did.
And when did you also decide to take that decision? And also that city, why did you decide to go to Singapore for the first international outpost?
Yeah, well, the thing is, we got contacted by Unlisted Collection, who runs a lot of restaurants in Singapore, and they had this Andre space. Andre was resigning and going and leaving Singapore, but I was hesitating in numbers of ways, because Andre was like the most famous restaurant in Singapore. So in many ways it was, excuse my French, but it was kind of a balls on the chopping block project. But I had some head chefs. One guy called Marcus, who's been with me for many years, and fairly quickly, as I said, we established the new restaurant, and he was kind of like, okay, but what do we do now? Am I just gonna stand there in the past every day again? I've been doing that for 7 years. So we kind of discussed together that, okay, but then you need to be in Singapore a lot, because I need to stay here, and he was open for it. So it was actually more of a keeping staff issue than me wanted to expand.
Right. But then again, under your leadership with Tristan Farmer, you received 3 stars there.
Yep.
I mean, that is a phenomenal thing to achieve, to have 2 outposts.
It's
completely
amazing.
Far away from each other. How was that, again, another set of pressure?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we had a great team, and the team was performing very well from day one. And I think what was nice about it is that it proven that the way we're doing things and how we choose to operate them and how we do how we transform the dishes over to other parts of the world and make sure the standards are up to it, etc. It was more a proven for us that we are doing it the right way. And I think Sweden especially has always been a very entrepreneur-driven country, and it's not many of us, and it's high tax pressure. So you need to be very organized to be able to compete on an international level. You can see that with Swedish companies, Spotify, IKEA, Volvo, etc. There's a lot of big brands coming out of Sweden. So there's always been this entrepreneur-driven thing going on in Sweden. So no, it was nice that we could prove that the way we're doing it, there was no one else to ask. No one's done that before. So especially now in Sweden. So it was proven that we were on the right track in how to handle it and organize everything.
So then when it comes to this current destination, the Middle East, Dubai. How easy of a decision was it when, to come here? Was it difficult? Was it tricky?
Well,
had you been here before?
Yeah, I mean, I came to Dubai the first time, I think it was 11 or 12 years ago, and I always liked it for numbers of reasons. And we had plenty of offers over the years to actually open here. But I felt like the market hasn't been ready for ultra fine dining. It's been more casual or luxury brasseries, etc., etc. But I felt in the last couple of years, things have changed here. And it's also, if you're going to do a restaurant like we're doing now over at Atlantis, it's a partnership. You need to have the right partner that fully understands what you're going to do, the support. And it wasn't until I met up with Kim Barter and Tim Kelly, who was the CEO at the time, and they went to Stockholm. That's when I felt, okay, these guys get it. They've been here, they understand, and they have the power to turn it into what I want it to be. So it's never an easy decision, but considering I like to buy and that they have the power to really do this project to 100%, in that way it was an easy decision.
So then when did you two start talking about, coming together and for Torsten taking the helm of this project? Because it's not an easy one to put together.
No, I mean, from our side, when we do a new restaurant, in some restaurants, we are promoting within. But considering now my guys has been with me for like 10, 12, 13 years, my corporate chefs are closest to me, we also want to get external input. And it's not like I can go somewhere for a stash or whatever now. I can go somewhere to eat, but I can't work in someone else's kitchen. We want to bring in some external talent. I mean, Tristan Farmer in Singapore is one. And, obviously I knew Torsten for many years. I know his track record. So I did a background check and it all came up great from people who worked with him, worked for him. So, for me, and also I felt like I need someone who come up to a certain age and maturity to handle this kind of project. They can stand the pressure of it. So, that's how Torsten came about.
And how was it, Torsten, coming from outside to then coming into this incredible organization?
Yeah.
Knowing the challenges, how was it?
It was fairly easy. I felt from day one that I had the support needed. I've been in love with Björn, his cooking and his achievements since I first had the first dinner in the Old Town.
Yeah.
And actually I brought my partner, Klaus Meyer, that I keep referring to on his as a 50-year-old birthday present. We went there and it was the meal of my life.
Wow.
Was exposed to there. And I remember we sat at Flying Elk afterwards, had a beer, and we spoke a little bit back and forth. And of course, I've been following Björn ever since, and the group's achievement. And they got 3 stars. And I would say when I look at Björn's cooking and what I like deep within, it has a strong link. And then I took my best friend to the new space.
Yep.
We sat there in the counter, and it was yet another best meal of my life. Sitting there, and I remember looking at these guys dancing around in the open kitchen. It was so slick, and everything seemed so seamless. And I was like, wow, if I ever was given an opportunity to work for Björn and these people, I would grab it.
So then the initial training phase for yourself, Torsten, were you in Sweden and in Singapore, or only in Sweden first?
Only in Sweden. And then I traveled to Singapore to eat and dine with my wife and see how that is pulled off, because it's a bit different.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah.
But I mean, I think it's an incredible partnership to have the two of you, because you're both, I would almost call you legacy chefs of what you have done. I think it's absolutely incredible. So then, when you're navigating the design of the menu, obviously you've got some restrictions in the region when it comes to ingredients, when, different things, the halal certifications, no alcohol, things like this. It's not just about the menu. You're also designing a journey for the guest, right? The experience. Now, for somebody who hasn't dined at that restaurant, can you just guide me a little bit through that experience?
Yeah. The guest comes and being greeted already when they enter the reception area at the Atlantis. And there's a receptionist taking a hostess taking them down to the venue. They ring the doorbell like they do in Sweden.
Yep.
And then they enter. And then they go take the elevator up, where they are being greeted by the front of house people. They go into the living room, where we have canapes. We serve 5 canapes there. The last canopy will be served at the box, we call it, the ingredient box, where we showcase all the produce for the main menu. We take people downstairs to the main dining room and show them the wine cellar, the prep kitchen on the guided kitchen tour. And in the main dining room, we have a kitchen counter with 13 seats, and we have some tables as well, where we can have 14 seats, people sitting. If everything is maxed out, so 27 covers in total. Where we do the main experience, open kitchen, a lot of foods being plated in front of the guest, or finalized at the table. And then we take people back up. And then they will have petit fours, coffee, tea. And at the moment, we also we can utilize the terrace because the weather allows it. So we actually have 3 dining spaces, I would say. So people start with canapes indoor in the living room, but then actually a lot of people are finishing outside on the terrace.
But also, I wanted to ask both of you, it's very prevalent that the waiters, the front of house team, they have extensive knowledge of the menu. Was that the case also very much in Sweden, that you took that bloodline and you brought it here?
Yeah, absolutely. But also, like, what's important due to the fact that the cooking, it's a lot about à la minute. Most of the dishes are coming warm or hot. So 2 things are important when you do that. Number 1, that's why we do the box. So we can introduce and talk about the ingredients, etc., before the plate is in front of them. So you can refer back to it. So once we come up and we finalize the dishes, we don't need to talk that much. We just basically saying what we're doing. But then for me, I want it to be, what's annoying when you go to fine dining is when you get a lecture about the dish. And I sit there and I see the dish is just collapsing. It's getting cold or it's melting. Keep it short. But if they ask, give them then a lecture. So you should have that knowledge, but you should not force it in the face of the guests. Let them eat. If they're wondering something, they will ask. Keep it basic.
But how do you then carry out those sort of trainings within the front of house to give them the confidence they require?
Well, 2 things. Obviously, once again, it comes down to organization and training. You have to spend a lot of time, and there you come back to, you need to have the right partner that understands that in pure, English, we're going to spend a lot of money before we even have a guest here, because we need to train. So that's where the partnership becomes important. So it's a combination of many things. And then also, everything from writing, and then everything from, from the leadership to, it's almost like homework before we open. And we have to take time for that.
We also require a lot of homework. I think it's the right word to use, because every time we do some changes, we are, from kitchen side, sharing WhatsApp documents for front of house to read up on. And then we do tastings with the team, showing them how we are talking about the ingredients being used, and then we also showcasing how we are executing it. And then we only send people who are comfortable with the dishes when they are. And if they need training during the day, then we train. We set up these things with them.
But then, Torsten, within your background of research and development, and I know that you've just recently changed the menu.
Yeah.
How do you then both come up with new dishes or new twists and things like that for this specific restaurant?
Well, I would say it's two things. Number one, the restaurant today has been open for like 3 months. And as you said, it's a new region with ingredients, etc. So it's not until you're up and operating where after a while you can start tweaking it big time. So if you compare them, Frantzén being in the Nordic region, obviously it's more towards Europe when it comes to the cooking or the flavor profile. And you look at Zen in Singapore, it's more towards Asia and especially Japan. And FZN here in Dubai now, it's a little bit of a mixture of both. But the new menu that we did last week here in Stockholm, that we will be for the spring here, that one is going more towards the Middle East flavors. But it takes time. You can't do that on the opening menu.
Right.
Because you need to be operating, you need to have the team ready, and Torsten and the management from the kitchen spent so much time working with suppliers, etc. But it's not until you open where the suppliers can come in and see the ambition of the restaurant. They understand what we're doing. They understand Torsten when he talks about langoustines or whatever. So that comes a little bit further down the line. It was the same when we opened Zen in Singapore. It was more towards, Frantzén. Now it has this more own identity with the flavor profile ingredients. So it takes a little bit of time if you want to be able to have the right quality from day one, which is obviously necessary for us with the ambition of the restaurant and the price tag, etc. So we can't gamble in that way. So it's not until we, fully operating and, at this head chef and the team knows the suppliers that you can really get them to understand.
So then when it comes to the customers here, I would say it's a relatively new experience for the Middle East, the type of dining that you're having. When it comes to the local and the Emiratis, how have they embraced the restaurant?
I mean, Torsten can answer, but for me, what's been important, just saying, coming from, doing it in that sense, it's the same as when we open in Singapore, etc. It's like we come here to do our thing. It's important. We do the same playlist. It's about having fun, and the key word is casual elegance, relaxed elegance. That's important. So we do our thing to 100%. And I hear from people, that, are you really going to do that? Are you really going to do finger food here? Yeah, we are. We do our thing. And from what I've seen, we had a great service last night with a lot of locals. They're loving it.
Yeah.
They're loving it because it's casual, but it's, casual elegance. They're loving it.
And Torsten, you're in touch with them directly on the table.
Yes.
How have they embraced it?
They have embraced it 100%. They're intrigued about the experience. I think they find it fun. And I think the playlist also plays a big role. And of course, the people conducting the service, the personalities. I think we're very good at also connecting with the table and see how we should approach them in terms of, how they're dealing with the experience.
What I'm also interested in is that you mentioned earlier when you first went to Björn's restaurant and you saw these guys dancing around their kitchen and everything was super slick. How did you design that concept? Because it is super slick. As in, you've got that beautiful L-shaped counter, but in the center, you've got the chefs literally plating up and they've got everything and it just looks so rehearsed in terms of where the fridges are, where the garnishes are, how they're cooking. How did you come up with that whole concept? Because it's very slick.
Well, I guess like we spent a lot of time with the first restaurant when we changed location back in 2000. We are actually open in 2017 in a new space. So when we had opportunity here to do to do it from the beginning. I mean, in Singapore, it was an old restaurant. We couldn't change everything.
Right.
We're organizing it more or less the same way. But, every restaurant has its own life also. The fridge just doesn't come exactly in the right place. And there were some things that, popped up in different ways. Yes. But it just takes a couple of weeks and then the team gets used to it, But no, it's a lot of planning ahead. That's what it is. You have to spend a lot of time, and it's like I think about it all the time. It's like when I'm in the shower, suddenly I've been showering for 40 minutes. I haven't washed my hair. I've been thinking about where to put that fridge or whatever.
Right.
So you live it for a long, long, long time. You're in it all the time. And my kids is like, I talk to you. And it's like, oh, sorry. And it's like I wasn't even thinking about the dish. I was thinking about where to have the spoons in there or whatever.
Right.
So, yeah, you live it and you breathe it 24/7. That's what you do when you're organizing or planning a restaurant.
Because I was going to say it must just take so much effort from a team perspective to get all of the small details and the finer details so that the customers don't notice, because they are right in front of you. You can't hide.
You can't.
No. Especially when you're doing the live fire and the langoustine dish and all of these kinds of things. But it's also quite exciting.
And you can't do any mistakes and this also comes down to the chefs. Like
exactly the training.
If you screw up, you can't look like you screw up.
Okay, so I want to ask you a question in terms of how you run the pass, because I saw it yesterday and I think it's quite intriguing. Now, both of you have been in kitchens which, let's say, have been how can I call it?
Louder,
artistic, loud, so on and so forth. Now, the incredible thing is that you have the chefs dancing around, let's say, doing everything, but at the same time, there is a serious way to run the operation and the pass. So because you make it look super seamless. But how do you do it? Who's expediting? Because there's no screaming or shouting. The dishes just come to you naturally. So how did you organize that in the beginning?
Well, I think it's a combination of experience, training, and
no disgusting ticket machines either, which is brilliant.
No,
because it's an open kitchen, so you can see everything. And I think all the managers there, we have one expediter who has the overview, because sometimes you turn your back to the guest if you're plating.
So it wouldn't be yourself who's in charge of the expediting per se?
No, we have a guy, Luigi, at the moment doing this, because he's always facing the guest, where I sometimes have to turn around and plate the food and taste the sauces and stuff like that. And then I don't have an overview. But as soon as I turn around, I'll support him by looking, there's water missing on this table. We have a way of communicating what kind of water the guest drinks. So I'll be able to go over and support, and pouring some water, or housekeeping, what we call housekeeping, when you clear the plates with the guests are done, so they don't sit there for long. And then Luigi spots that immediately that, we're clearing the table, so he can call the next one. So it's constantly rotating with the support of all who is part of service, either if it's front of house or chefs. So it's kind of very homogeneous, it's one unit.
But it's also amazing how also the front of house team, how they're plating, how they're talking to the guests, how they're reading the guests. Because you must have so many, such a varied amount of guests. Atlantis itself is a incredible destination with huge amounts of different types of people. But also, I can imagine, not so much for yourselves, but for the younger ones, when you've got, huge celebrities or people who, or big chefs that are coming into coming for dinner, to manage that must be quite tricky.
I think, like what we always say, a couple of things. It's like every guest. There's no we don't have VIPs,
Right.
you know. Everyone is a VIP, so that's like the DNA, and it comes from above. You know, I don't go and talk to, you know, one table more than another. Everyone is just as important. So and that is a DNA we have. Like, it's a very, very Scandinavian way of looking at things. We don't really like celebrities in that way. They not get that, you know, don't get too famous, calm down, etc., etc. That's like the Swedish way, you know. We call it lagom. It's like in the middle. Don't do anything. So it's more that. So it's more like calm down. Like, treat them as everyone else. We do our thing. That's what we do. Same when, if you know, you have inspectors in or whatever. Well, it's the same. It's the normal. Everyone is an inspector in our world. Everyone is paying the same amount of money. If there is anyone that might, you know, what's important for a restaurant in that sense, it's regulars.
Yeah.
Because in that way, you know, when things happen, as a pandemic, etc., we were fully booked. Why? Because we have so many returning guests all the time. That's, in that sense, a VIP. It's not a Michelin inspector or a celebrity that comes 2 times a year or whatever. It's average Joe that comes 10 times a year. That's the philosophy.
And one thing I also wanted to sort of point out is you've both worked, again, in harsh kitchen environments. And, you know, Bjorn, you were saying that you understood from a very early age in the kitchen that, you know, you have to make sure that the team are all mentally sound. Now, when it comes to the wellness of all of your teams across the board, how do you ensure that they are, you know, the best they can possibly be, not physically, but mentally?
Well, you know, I think it's like our job, mine and Torsten's, etc., our job is to make sure every single one of them has the ability to perform the best they can. How can they do that? And I remember, as I said, I opened a restaurant in 2008, and I remember we had one investor, and he gave me the best advice I have ever had. And that was a year after the opening. You know, I was more younger, more angry, more insecure. I was all these things.
Yeah.
And I was on the phone with him. It was a Sunday. I was like, oh, how was last week, etc., etc. Oh, these bloody chefs, blah, 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 what's going on? I was, you know, not impressed by something. And he started to laugh out. And he said, why the hell are you laughing? Oh, you haven't got it, have you? I was like, what do you mean? It's all your fault. Either you hired the wrong one or you trained them wrong. It's all your fault. You just got to decide what it is. Have you either hired the wrong person or have you trained them wrong? It's not their fault. It's all your fault. It's true. It's true. So if you have that in mind, you don't need to be upset with anyone. It's very simple. And if you train them wrong, well, you know, talk to them. Hey, man, do you feel you have got the right training to perform the way you want? As you said, how the servers are approaching you, how do you have the knowledge, etc., etc., etc. If they respond back to you, yeah, I have got all the right training to do my job the way you expect it to be done. Okay, so why aren't you doing it then? You can't. Okay, then, sorry, I hired the wrong person. I don't think we should work together because I don't want to come into work where I spend more time than I do with my kids and be upset. And you don't want to come to work and hear me, you know, nagging on to you and complaining. It's better you work somewhere else. The level is too high for you. But you're welcome back in a year or two. It's very simple.
But it's a big thing, though. You know, and you're absolutely right, because a lot of different chefs or restaurateurs, they do take it out on the team, but they don't have that sort of culpability to say, actually, it is down to me, or, you know, my fault completely. So I think it's a great way of looking at it.
It is.
But it's really important, especially for the team to keep cool, to keep calm, and very much like a football team. You know, when you've got when you're in the Premier League, you can't have the coach, you know, go mental on the sidelines. They've got to be level-headed, so you score the goals.
You need a little bit of spice.
A little touch up, no, of course, occasionally, of course.
But it's very right, and I also think it comes to being a little bit more senior. Also when you get kids, you learn a lot of these things, being challenged. And I look at the team and I see them as a family. I treat them as family members because I spend more time with them than I actually do with my family.
Yes. Yeah.
So I embrace them and I'll work with them. And I have the same approach like Björn just said. You have to teach them how to perform, or else you have done something wrong as a leader.
Now, the second to last question I would like to ask is that Bjorn and yourself, you've been at the level, especially, the 3-star game, let's say. In your opinion, Bjorn, what do those restaurants have in common when it comes to having that 3-star Michelin bloodline? Because you've obviously dined all over the world. You've experienced that dining. You have 2 phenomenal restaurants. I'm sure 3 that will be at, the very top levels of gastronomy. What do you feel are those bloodlines that run through those restaurants?
I think personality. They have their own style. And even though I go to sometimes 3 Michelin-star restaurants or whatever, and maybe the cooking or the way they do the front of house, whatever, maybe not exactly the way I want it to be, but I can feel that the staff working there, they are super proud of what they're doing, and they're doing it exactly 100% the way they decided it to be done. So as long as someone doing it their own way, I'm super happy, even though I might not like everything. And I think like if it's a chef-driven restaurant, if it's an open kitchen or a closed kitchen or whatever, if the chef is there or not, you should in some ways along the way here, you should feel the personality of the chef, even if it's not in the house.
Right.
That's for me, it's a 3-star. Obviously, like, great cooking, great ingredients, but that a lot of restaurant has that. So for me, it's more about where a team really feels and buys into what they're doing. They're proud over it. They think it's great. I tag along. And I want to be able to feel the chef's personality. If it's there or not, doesn't matter. Especially when it's not there, I want to be able to feel, this is Alain Passade restaurant, or this is Alain Ducasse restaurant, or whatever, or Thomas Keller. That's what I think stands out for me.
For yourself, Torsten?
The same.
Same?
Exactly the same.
Because I think it's just really important, because we've got so many listeners who are chefs from all over the world, and I think that's really incredible advice to really understand that. Now, when it comes to this region, you've obviously seen and experienced the gastronomic landscape. Now, what would you like to see more of? What are your predictions when it comes to the dining landscape of the Middle East?
What I would like to see, and what I'm seeing, and what I think it's going to grow even further, it's like a bit like how it was in the Scandinavian Nordic region 20-25 years ago. You have this new young generation of chefs coming up who are really pushing it around this region. More like what the Nordic is doing with what we did with fermenting and foraging with Noma, and seafood, and using local ingredients that no one thought could be in a fine dining restaurant. That is going to happen more and more. And that's going to happen also now when you have, you have Gourmet, you have the Michelin, you have 50 best in this region. They're going to also help out to, grow this with the locals, with the local young chefs. So it feels a little bit like when it comes to fine dining, how we felt 20 years ago in the Nordic region. That's what's happening now in this region, and that, we would love to be a part of that with where we're coming from. That's why I say that's why we also are tweaking the new menus more towards this, and it's a nice challenge for us as well. And with that comes also a higher pressure from the chefs in the restaurant when it comes to ingredients, more local, etc., etc., etc.
And do you feel the same, Torsten?
Yeah, I'm very excited to explore more what this region has to offer and see how we can implement it. I'm very excited about this.
Because
definitely.
I mean, from your point of view, again, the background that you have with research and development to sort of understand the land here, the history, the ingredients. How is that for you?
It's very intriguing. I don't know so much about it, but when we scratch the surface, things are popping up, like the honey from Hatta. You know, there all the greenhouses. There's not so much wild stuff, but I heard that krill is a big thing here. I will also see that. I'm very excited to see if we can inspire producers to do something in the region that can benefit the restaurant scene here in Dubai. That I'm very intrigued about, to see in terms of biodynamic or ecological products, especially when it comes to dairy. There's a lot of dairy production here, but it would be nice to see if we can higher the quality even better here. So we don't have to import all these high quality dairy products.
And the great thing is that it is happening, and the government know it. They're pushing forward for that, but it's really fantastic. And you have got these small growers that have got some phenomenal things happening around.
Yeah, and I felt like since we opened and since we came here, it's been very welcoming, and especially from the chef community. So, you know, exchanging knowledge, it's hugely important in this stage. So, exciting times ahead. That's how I feel about it for the whole region.
Now, gents, we have now come to the quick fire round.
All right.
So, I have to ask, favorite ingredient, Bjorn?
I would say I wouldn't be able to cook without lemon because I need acidity in the food.
Torsten?
Olive oil.
Olive oil.
I think olive oil is so complex, delicious. Definitely.
So then, spicy or pickled?
Oh,
Both.
yeah. Okay, spicy.
Yeah, spicy.
Spicy?
But not hot.
Okay.
I like spicy. Also something I learned by joining Frantzén is the use of spice that I've become very addicted to. But it has to be balanced, so it's not becoming just hot.
Right.
You know, and overpowers the thing.
Okay.
But the hint of a little heat here and there, which is also a little bit new to me, coming from, you know, the pure breed Scandinavian cooking. I really like that.
So then, pine leaves or wood sorrel?
Pine.
You're mean, man. You're mean.
I say pine. I say pine.
And for you?
You cannot choose one kid above the other. Let me put it like that.
Because I know how important these ingredients are
Yeah.
in that landscape.
But since we're a two-headed dragon and he choose pine, I will choose sorrel. Juiciness, acidity again.
Very
Fresh
true.
nut.
So then, shawarma, gents, or rye bread?
Rye.
Rye, no doubt. And my wife actually bakes rye bread once a week here.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have to try it. So, gents, as of now, this very moment, what are your top 3 cuisines that you love to eat?
Top 3. I actually, I like Indian food. And I would say Italian and Thai.
Torsten?
Yeah. I would say French. I love everything about French cooking, even though it's at times it's heavy. I love Italian. And I love Scandinavian cooking.
So then, who would you say this is for both of you, are your top 3 culinary heroes, and they don't necessarily need to be chefs?
Well, I'm gonna go for chefs. I would say Atlantis, what he's done, and also considering after his, that terrible airplane crash, and he decided to actually not wear a chef jacket anymore, and considering what he's done, building an empire, and also he's also being a very nice guy and still super curious. And obviously working with Alain Passard, and the lightness of that cooking and the vegetable kitchen. And I would say one of my maybe best meals ever was in the old location of L'Astrange, Pascal Barbeau. And that cooking he was like a sniper, every dish. Not a lot on there, but bam, bam, bam. So that was very inspiring many years ago, but that was fabulous.
Love that. And Torsten, for you?
3 French I choose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, nice.
I was also
say.
like,
God, what happened? Embarrassing.
no, but the person I mentioned a few times, Klaus Meyer, who kind of enlightened the path for me. Huge inspiration. I would say Rene. Been around for many years. He's brilliant vision for details and commitment. Very inspiring. And then I would say Björn. I'm a big fan of the cooking. I think it's a big privilege being part of this here. Huge inspiration. Definitely.
So, gents, from all of your years of experience in the industry, can you tell me your funniest ever either kitchen incident or restaurant incident that you've seen or been involved in? And you don't need to name names.
Mm-hmm. Funniest? Oof. I would have loved. It was me. I did it. I would have loved to seen it, like on a CCTV, seeing it happening. But it's actually both funny and sad. But the thing is, I was working in a 1-star kitchen. This is just when I, kind of started, and I was slicing chives, cutting chives, and I cut a part of my fingertip off. And when I see human blood, I get really I'm fading out. So, and back at the time, I was passing out and I was bleeding, and I was walking, to get, wrap it up, but I fainted. And at the time, for hot pans and etc., it was like a stainless, look almost like a bathtub with water in. So I fainted in there, and because I got water in my face, I straight banged up again.
Oh my God.
So I was like a rubber man. I fainted, boom, head into the water, and before I actually hit the stainless, I was back up again. I was wet, and I'm like, what the hell happened here? And the rest of the kitchen were like, what is going on? And they were all laughing their asses off. I would have loved to seen that.
Whoa. Torsten, for you?
Beat that one.
Yeah.
Impossible. I'm actually, my head was spinning with 1,000 kilometers per hour to see if I could come up with something. But I'm a little bit blocked on this one.
Okay.
Because, to be honest, because I've experienced a lot of things when you look back at them.
Yes.
They're funny, but maybe they're not appropriate to bring forward. You know what I mean? So let me keep it like that.
All right, done. Now, what advice would you give to 16-year-old self?
I would say, I don't know. It goes both ways. I would tell myself in one way, don't take things too seriously when they go wrong. I lost so much sleep over going over things and worrying about things. But on the other hand, by worrying about things and taking things seriously, it also takes you somewhere. So that combination is hard to find, but yeah, mistakes will happen. Get on with it.
Torsten, for you?
I will also say something about don't worry about things that hasn't happened. Your heads can spin a lot. More focus on the things ahead of you. Being in the present, and also maybe enjoy sometimes what happened, and not just thinking about tomorrow.
So then, final question, gents. What advice would you give to young chefs or young restaurateurs who want to be at those Formula One kitchens? I'm talking about the highest possible levels, those 2-3 star kitchens. What advice would you give them?
Well, I think it in many ways it's a lifestyle. I mean, it's the same as a professional athlete. You got to be professional, you know. You need to come in. You need to make sure, like if you're gonna go and play like a football game or ice hockey game or whatever it is, you don't come in hangover. You don't do that. You know, you need to look after yourself. You need to be professional. You need to be professional and you need to be serious. You know, keep standards high. That's what you need to do. You need to take it seriously and you need to be professional.
Torsten?
And my advice to a young person will also be patient. Don't rush. Don't expect that things will be rushed. For some people it does. For other people, and for the majority of people, it's about consistency. And be determined and be patient.
Now, if anybody wanted to reach out to you via social media, how can they do that?
Well, I have an Instagram account.
Okay.
But I'm pretty bad on answering on all the direct messages, I have to say. But that's the best way to give it a try there.
Okay.
The same for me. Instagram will be the platform where I will communicate with a broad audience.
So what I'll do, gents, is I'll put all of the links and the relevant links in all the show notes as well. Now, it's just for me to say, first of all, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be here. We have a lot of people who really, including myself, are inspired by the work that you have done and do.
Thank you.
All the time. You are really pushing limits and pushing boundaries, not just of gastronomy, but also the culture within gastronomy to just have better people and to have an incredible industry. So thank you very, very much for that, because it's been absolutely phenomenal to really get you on the show. And I know that the restaurant is going to soar to even greater heights than it already has in its short lifespan. But thank you so much, gents.
Thank you for having us.
Definitely.
Cheers.
What a privilege it's been to sit down with Torsten and Björn, two men who haven't just played the game, they've changed it. From the hallowed kitchens of Noma to opening some of the world's finest restaurants in the world, to now building FZN at Atlantis, the Palm, a project that feels truly historic. Their partnership is more than just food. It's about vision, creativity, relentless evolution, and I'm still buzzing from the conversation. Not just because of their accolades, but because of their mindset. Always growing, always challenging themselves, and always inspiring the next generation. A massive thank you to Torsten and Björn for sharing their wisdom, stories and spirit with us today. All the details are in the show notes. And one last thing, if you're enjoying this show or know someone who could learn a thing or two from our guests, please share it. You never know, these conversations might inspire someone to take action and be the very best at what they do. Thank you for listening, and yes, you are a legend. So until next time, food is memories.